Okay, second Supreme Court case here in Unit 1. Remember, there are 15 required Supreme Court cases in AP Government. This is the second one. This is an interesting one. This one always, students remember this one well. If they have this one on the AP test, you are going to kill it. It's not a hard one to remember. It deals with high schools, and it's also just kind of a, I don't know, the reasoning is fun too a little bit. It's like or at least the dissent side, or the reasoning of the government should be is fun. Okay, so here we go. You should have your yellow sheet of paper. I went over this in the last video about how to use it. You just follow along. Hopefully, I either mail it to you if you're at home or you have them in class, and I gave you a bunch of them. So yeah, go ahead and just follow along. We're not going to do the pair reading here unless we do it in class. Otherwise, we're rocking and rolling right now. All right, cool. Unit. It's Unit 1, by the way, so you can put that. All right, U.S. v. Lopez. United States versus Lopez. By the way, just FYI on this, whoever is listed first is like the party that's like suing. Just so you know. So United States is suing someone named Lopez. And this is 1995. So not that long ago, right? Not that long ago. Not too long before you were born. Unless you're watching this like 10 years from now, and then it was a long time ago. All right, 1995. All right, issue. Are there limits to Congress's power under the Commerce Clause? For the first 150 years of the nation, there definitely were some limits to Congress. Under the New Deal in the 1930s and into the 40s, there definitely was a change where Congress could could almost regulate any economic activity, anything close to some sort of economic activity. Congress was allowed to regulate it, and that was really based on Supreme Court decisions. And so the question is, are there any limits to it? Like, can Congress just literally regulate anything and then have, almost unlimited power? All right. So the key clause or amendment, hello, based on the question, you know this. I'm almost insulting your intelligence. I apologize, but it's the Commerce Clause. Remember, Commerce Clause, implied powers, necessary and proper clause, those are the things that have been used in the history of the United States, and it's led to an increase in power, and it's changed this balance between states and the federal government in favor of the federal government. And so here's a case where the federal government's going to be trying to regulate something, and Supreme Court is going to have something to say about whether it could do it. All right. All right. Here's the facts of the case. All right. So this is kind of an interesting case. So there was this high school kid. His name was Alfonso Lopez, and he brings a concealed gun to school. Alfonso Lopez brings a concealed gun to school. All right. That first off, that's a problem. All right. Yeah. All right. That's not good. He is charged under state law. All right. Under state Texas, this is in Texas. Under state law in Texas, that is illegal. The state charges him. Everything would be good. All right. He'd have gone to jail for that. All right. However, the federal government swoops in under the Supremacy Clause and says, oh, hey, we have a law against bringing a gun to school, and we're going to take this case over. Thank you very much. Remember, if the federal government and the states have the same law about a criminal activity, the federal government can swoop in and take it over. So they charge Lopez under the Gun-Free School Zones Act of 1990. Say that really fast 3 times. Gun-Free School Zones Act of 1990. Gun-Free School Zones Act. I can't do it. All right, crap. All right, the Gun-Free School Zones Act of 1990, or as a lot of students write, if they ever do an essay on this, they call it the GFSZA. I'd get it wrong and be like, I always get it wrong and be like, gun schools free zone, the gun free zone schools act, the school zones gun free. I always screw it up. So yeah. All right. So they charge him under that. And they base this law, the law called the Gun Free School Zones Act of 1990 was based on the Commerce Clause. Because obviously in the Constitution, there's no enumerated power that says federal government may regulate guns being carried to school. I mean, there's no enumerated power listed. So they base this under the Commerce Clause. All right, question is this. Does the Gun Free Act exceed Congress's power under the Commerce Clause? Does the Gun Free Act, Gun Free School Zone Act of 1990, exceed Congress's power under the Commerce Clause? By the way, Congress's reasoning in passing this under the Commerce Clause was basically this. Guns are made from parts. Parts of guns travel across state lines. Therefore, guns can be regulated by the federal government, a gun was carried into a school, that gun at some point has a part that probably went over a state line. Therefore, Congress has the right to regulate guns being brought to school, and therefore Congress can pass a federal law under it. That's kind of the reasoning, which is a little difficult to follow. I'll be honest with you, but that's how widespread the Commerce Clause interpretation was. But by the way, we are not talking here about whether bringing a gun to school is good. Obviously, horrible. And there was a state law, in every state there is, against bringing a gun to school. The question is whether the federal government has to have a law about it, and they have the right to under the Commerce Clause. Whether bringing a gun to school is commerce, based on the fact that the gun at some point might have crossed a state line, either in its manufacturing or the part of it is like there's a screw on it, and that came from Oklahoma, so therefore that's commerce. So yeah, that's the question. All right. It was 5-4 for Lopez. Lopez wins. By the way, Alfonso Lopez did spend some time in prison. I believe the case was decided after he was already out of prison, so that kind of sucks for him. He didn't get out early or anything, but he won the case. And basically it was, and we'll look at what the ruling was. Okay, so first, here's what they ruled. The Gun-Free School Zone Act was unconstitutional, or at least the section of the Gun-Free School Zone Act that said that bringing a gun to school was illegal, at least this part of it, this particular section, that the federal government had the right to punish people or students who do this. All right, so unconstitutional. And here's what they ruled. They ruled the reason that is illegal is because possession of a gun is not economic activity. Possession of a gun is not economic activity. So basically, the Supreme Court did not fall for Congress's, argument that like a gun at some point was produced, manufactured, a part of that gun might have come from another state, interstate commerce here. So therefore, you can regulate whether someone brings a gun to school. And the Supreme Court was like, nice. No. Okay, so that's the ruling. Why? Because the act of carrying a gun into a school does not impact interstate commerce. The federal government tried to argue it did through the manufacturing of the gun, but this particular act is not interstate commerce. So basically, Supreme Court is calling time out here on the federal government in terms of passing laws based on the Commerce Clause. Here is the dissent. Okay, so there is a dissent. There were five. It was a 5-4 decision. So there were 4 people who didn't vote for it. You may want to pause it if you need to write. All right, so the dissent went like this: gun violence impacts education. Okay, gun violence impacts education. Therefore, and education, by the way, impacts jobs. So here's the reasoning of the minority who lost the case. Gun violence impacts education. Education, in what the job you get, impacts commerce. Therefore, bringing a gun to school impacts interstate commerce because it could impact the job you have in the future. Thus, Congress can regulate. All right. Now, that may also sound a little bit convoluted. However, they were the dissenters and they lost this case. And so in the end, Alfonso Lopez had the case thrown out. By the way, interestingly, if the federal government had just stayed out of this case and had let the state take care of it, then all would have been good and Alfonso Lopez would have paid for the crime. Well, I think technically he did anyway. All right, cool. All right, I hope you find this case interesting. Use your whiteboard, practice it. Remember, you really, really, really need to know what's the clause, what's the facts, what's the decision. Those are the 3 parts of every Supreme Court case you need to know. I just review one more time. What's the clause? What are the facts? And what is the decision? Make sure you focus on those 3 things. And I would write it out, erase it, write it out, erase it. Make sure you know it. All right, good. Thanks. Bye.